Salutations friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kristin. Today I'm going to be answering some of your questions about fragrance collecting. I asked you guys a day ago if you guys had any questions regarding fragrance collection. I got some really fantastic questions. So we're going to sit down and we're going to answer those questions for you guys. So if you'd like to know a little bit about that, then keep watching. I like to sit down and do videos where I respond to comments. I'm going to be doing that video next week. And I think what I'm going to start doing is asking questions that kind of relate to some of the comments I'm going to answer on my community page. So make sure you subscribe to my channel if you have any specific questions. And also don't forget to hit the little bell down below if you want to be notified when I have new videos. And I have 12 questions. One or two of these I think will be better for the next video answering questions because I want this to be about fragrance collecting. Now I initially was going to do this video talking about fragrance collection, but the video got quite long. So instead I'm just going to be focusing on the questions that you guys asked. But if you guys would like me to do a video kind of dedicated to my advice about fragrance collecting on top of the questions that are asked, please let me know. There's going to be a lot of weird jumps and edits in this video. I am sneezing like crazy. I don't know why. I don't have allergies. If it looks like I've been crying, I've just been sneezing. My voice is scratchy, although I'm not sick. So just please, I'm sorry, bear with me. And also the other thing too, a little disclaimer. Any of these comments that I answer, I'm giving you guys my own personal advice. A lot of these are opinions based on how I collect fragrances, my budget for scents. Just because I say something doesn't mean it's correct, even if it's conflicting with somebody completely different. That doesn't make me right, them wrong, or them right and me wrong. Really, the only person that matters in regards to anybody's opinion is your opinion. So if you think I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. That's how it works. Same thing with reviews. My nose doesn't matter. Your nose is the only one that matters in regards to scents. So I just kind of wanted to let you know. I am going to be talking a lot in this video. This video will be long and chatty because I definitely want to get in to all of these questions. There's 12 questions. Again, one or two of these I'm going to save for the next video. Probably will be up Monday or Tuesday of next week. So again, very chatty video. So let's get into it. The first question comes from Ascending the Depths, and their question or comment is, how do you move past the initial phase of finding what you like and then narrowing your collection to just what you want to keep? I think that question is great and also a great way to kind of segue into collecting fragrances. I think when you're collecting fragrances, a lot of people think to be a legitimate collector, you have to have a collection that's large. My collection right now is just around 950 bottles. It is on the what is wrong with me level of fragrance. But I think when you collect fragrances, you know what your limits are. And I think as long as you're not hurting yourself financially or in other ways, you know, setting rules and boundaries for yourself makes you a collector and not an addict. And shopping addictions are real. It's not just with fragrance, it's with anything that you can have an excuse to purchase. If you have an addictive personality and shopping is like your trigger, then you can make dangerous, very hurtful and harmful decisions for yourself. So I think setting rules and boundaries is going to be the most important thing when starting a fragrance collection, and getting past the initial phase of finding fragrances and figuring out what you want to keep in your collection and remove from your collection will also kind of fit those rules and boundaries that you set for yourself too. Those boundaries might be the number of fragrances in your collection, or how much a month or a year you're willing to spend, or the types of fragrances you add to your collection. You might say, I will not buy a fragrance that costs more than $150, or I'm not going to have more than 5 full bottles in my collection. I mean, you're really first and foremost in regards to adding fragrances to your collection, growing and expanding it, and keeping and removing is going to come from you in regards to, again, the rules and the boundaries that you set up for yourself. And I also think that it's important that I'm not sitting here saying that you have to write these hardline rules down. I think most people know what their general budget should be for unnecessary luxury purchases, and how important fragrance is to me. Fragrance is an unnecessary luxury purchase. And since I have such a large collection, I will share with you my two biggest rules and boundaries that I have for myself that maybe will kind of help you guys see what I mean. The first rule is I will not go into debt with a perfume. So I put a lot of things on American Express because I can pay it off at the end of the month. And then voila, I have a lot of rewards points. And at the end of the year, I might have like $1,000, sometimes $3,000 worth of reward points that I could spend on something else. And that's just because I decide to use my American Express card like a debit card. I pay it off at the end of every month. But I don't go into debt. I don't have a credit card other than an American Express. So there's no way for me to go into debt anyway. Some people use things like Afterpay. I think as long as you're being smart, Afterpay and things like that is fine. Do not get lost in because that can be a hole that you can fall down that can be hurtful too. Be very mindful. But for me personally, like, it's not going into debt. That's just my rule. If I can't pay it off at the end of the month, or if I can't outright buy it with cash, then I can't afford it. Then maybe I save up for something more expensive. Now, I have a variety of different businesses. My income is very not normal, but I do have a very nice income that comes in. I do have a very robust savings account, and that account is I do not touch. That is like just a comfort zone. There's investments, there's a lot that goes into that savings account, but for the most part, that's my savings account. And then I have my account for fun money, frivolous purchases. My other rule of thumb is I will not go into my savings account unless it is a last ditch resort. So if I need to sell something to get money, I go into first my frivolous account and then I go here. And so there will be times where I will sell fragrances, or I will sell decants, or I'll kind of go on a mass decluttering purge, because one of those fun little medical bills that I get all the time with my fun medical condition comes up, and then I owe like five figures. Sometimes it feels close to 6, but it's not quite there yet. And to pay those off before even touching savings account, I go to my other places first. This is the first place that I go. Do I technically lose money doing this? Yes. Would it be better if I just put everything in my savings account? Absolutely. But my savings account's very nice, very padded savings account. And I also like to have fun with my money. So I get a lot of joy out of purchasing fragrances. So I'm not going into debt. I might be losing money in the long run by doing it this way, but also at the same time, I know that going into this is real rules and boundaries. So I do make sure I'm adding more money to my savings account every month, rather than just leaving it how it is and adding everything to my fun money. There is a method to my madness. Do I lose money in that situation? Yes, but the last time that happened was like 3 years ago, and it's probably not gonna happen for a very long time. So for the most part, I'm safe. But for me, the rules and boundaries I set for myself are those are the 2 rules. Again, not going into debt and selling this first before I touch my savings account if I absolutely have to, but I haven't had to in for long, and I don't really need much going into I don't, because that was a weird situation where that happened. But those are the rules that I set for myself, and those are very hard rules that I set for myself. And so like when narrowing down my collection, so say when I was narrowing down my collection, I went to the fragrances I wasn't wearing, I went to the fragrances that I knew I could easily repurchase, that I knew I could get a lot of money for. I had a variety of different reasons for removing fragrances that I did, but I think everybody will have their own reasons. I think a lot of it, the best advice I can give you for a fragrance collector is follow your gut. So if you're the type of person where you're only gonna have 5 fragrances in your collection and you've fallen in love with a scent and you wanna add it, and your rules tell you you have to get rid of one, first get rid of one. And second, get rid of the first one that comes to your mind. You know, that's gonna be the one you don't wear. That's gonna be the one that you're not excited for. That's just my advice. But you could also like buy decants, get samples, you know, add things like that. But I also think that that's a whole other rabbit hole you're going down when you start making excuses to add more things than remove. I think you have to follow your hard rules, at least in the beginning, and then as you kind of get more experience and expand, and maybe you start budgeting more into this money by taking it from other places, not savings account, but like say maybe you like to go out to eat like 5 times a month and you go out 4 times a month to give yourself a little bit of money for fragrance. That's kind of like what I'm saying. But I think you're gonna understand yourself what you want to keep based on why you're collecting, how you're collecting, and the rules that you set for yourself. But I would just say, most importantly, follow your gut and don't kind of hurt yourself financially in the process for adding things to your collection and removing things, especially in the initial stage. The initial stage is when you're super excited. Like you're like, yeah, you're like a kid at a candy store. Or if you're gone grocery shopping hungry, that is the worst. I think I spend more money going to the grocery store hungry than I do on anything else, and that's saying something. So I guess what I'm saying is just make smart decisions. Don't set yourself up for failure, set yourself up for success. Keep your rules and just, you know, have fun too. But also, again, listen to your gut. Her comment is, or her question is, who is your favorite perfumer and do you buy all their work so you have a full collection? If you are new to my channel, Francis Kurkdjian is actually my favorite nose, and I fell in love with his work before I knew what a nose was. That's how I know he's my favorite. But I don't own everything that he has. That would be so hard because it's hard to buy everything. I don't like everything that they do. But I can see, as if you're the type of collector where that's how you collect, or you collect everything from your favorite nose, you most definitely can do that. But for me personally, I own a lot of fragrances from his own line, his MFK line. I don't own all of them yet. I'm planning on, hopefully at some point, purchasing them all. I did before, like I said, when I kind of sold a lot of things, I sold 1 or 2 bottles from him, and I'm really kind of kicking myself that I did. But I have my reasons, and I'm also not like super kicking myself that I did, because again, I made a smart decision based off of my rules and boundaries. But when it comes to Francis Kurkdjian, I love his personal lineup. I love his point of view as a nose. I really love what he does with Burberry too. So I don't own everything from his collection, but I do own a lot. I do get excited when he has new releases. And yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I can say. If you follow my channel, you know how much I love his work. Rich Mitch, hello, salutations. They ask, I'm currently doing a no by July. What's the longest you've been without acquiring a perfume since you became a collector? If I considered myself a collector for 15 years, but let's assume for my YouTube career, so just about the past 6 years, I think that's easier. But within 15 years, when I first broke up with my boyfriend and then got with John, about 6 to 8 months just because of space. And currently, about 3 to 4 weeks. I think it's awesome when people do those like no buy things. I think that's really smart. For me personally, I don't have a need to do it, but I do love watching other people do it. It's kind of like watching people do decluttering videos, which I think are fantastic. And I love seeing those types of videos being really popular because I think it's really healthy to have a nice kind of being able to let go of things and not hang on to things. Personally, that's not how I collect or how I am as a person, but I think it's really smart and healthy to see that kind of stuff. But for me personally, since I've been a collector, I would say 3 to 4 weeks. And it's just because I don't have a desire to buy anything. If I have a desire to buy something, I will. And sometimes I'm just at home, or I'm busy, or I'm sick, or I'm just preoccupied with work. And I just kind of forget about purchasing fragrance for a few weeks. And then I remember, and then I go on a crazy buying spree to make up for the lost time, which happens, which is not very healthy. But yeah, I would say about 3 to 4 weeks since being a collector, or let's just say since starting my YouTube channel. I think that's the safest way to be. This next question comes from Saud Benali. If I mispronounced your username, I'm very sorry. They ask, what about collecting vintage fragrances and not be crazy about new releases? Vintage fragrances, you have to have an appreciation and a knowledge about. And what I mean by that is a lot of vintage fragrances, not all of them, have a very specific composition or a variety of different compositions that are very complex and beautiful and nuanced. And a lot of newer releases tend to be more minimalistic, simplistic fragrances. Still very beautiful, very artistic, but it's just a point of view, 2 different completely experiences. So first you have to really like those type of complex fragrances and compositions, and also have a knowledge about what questions to ask with vintage fragrances. I only own 2 or 3 vintage fragrances. I do enjoy them, but I don't have the knowledge. So I would say if you want to get into vintage fragrances, first kind of try and experience maybe more modern formulations of those vintage scents to see if you like the general composition. As a rule of thumb, I would say that most people would say the older versions are going to be a lot better than the newer versions. But if you think that a fragrance smells dated, then you're probably not going to like a vintage composition. But if you like the way some of these fragrances smell, but you think they might be too sharp, or there's something missing in their composition, or they're not like, don't have the wow factor that you thought they did, there's a likelihood that they were reformulated to hell and back, and you'll probably really appreciate the vintage versions. That's just my opinion. I think the biggest thing with finding vintage fragrances is knowing what questions to ask and be an active member of vintage perfume communities. They're very welcoming and more than happy to share their knowledge and say, these are the questions to ask, this is what you're looking for, and these are the great resources that you can use to kind of try and acquire vintage scents. But a lot of it has to do with the types of fragrances you like to wear, less about vintage is better. It's more about, do you like complex, really beautiful, nuanced compositions, or do you like more modern, minimalistic fragrances? If you like the more modern, minimalistic compositions, you're probably gonna not like the vintage, or you could like both, I don't know. But I would say the first thing is to find out if you enjoy and appreciate those kind of older compositions, because if you do like those more complex, beautifully nuanced, deep compositions, I think vintage fragrances would be a great way to go, because sometimes you can find some amazing deals on them and get some real beauties. This next comment or question comes from Tia B, and their question or comment is, how do you discover different houses and new perfumes? What about the ones that aren't necessarily mainstream? That is a great question. And I think the best way to do it is to kind of do a lot of footwork everywhere. So like YouTube is a great way to learn about new fragrances, popular fragrances, hyped fragrances. We're more of entertainment than anything else. I'd say be active in communities, be active on Reddit, be active on Fragrantica, be active on Base Notes. You know, find out like what type of fragrance writers and bloggers are out there. Instagram is a fantastic resource for finding out about new fragrances. There's so many amazing people who share their scents to find out about a lot of new scents. I think most of the new fragrance houses I find out about is actually through Instagram. But it really is, it's kind of like a total of all of the above. But I think the best way is to just do a little bit of footwork in communities that love sharing fragrances, talking about scents, and recommending it in a very organic manner. So for places and forums like Reddit, like Base Notes, like Fragrantica, like a lot of Facebook groups. Those are great ways to learn about new scents, or even ask about it. You could be like, hey, has anyone tried anything different or new? And you will get like so many people kind of like gushing and being so excited to talk about this new indie fragrance house they found, or not so mainstream lines. YouTube really isn't the best way as a whole. There are a few channels that do that very well. But for the most part, a lot of people are talking about the more mainstream fragrances. The new releases are like the same, like kind of like 25 houses. And I understand why. I kind of fall into that rut a lot of times too. But to find out about like new houses or kind of underappreciated houses, definitely kind of like do a little bit of footwork on like Instagram, Facebook, Fragrantica, Reddit, and Base Notes. I think that's the best way to do it. And just again, be active, because you'll find out about them. People love talking about this kind of thing. So I think that if you want to find out about underappreciated houses, like you could just probably spend a few days and you'll probably have like a laundry list of things to try and discover. This next comment comes from Trevera Q. When collecting fragrances, do you buy and or keep what you don't like in order to complete a collection? I think that depends on how I'm collecting. If it's a utilitarian fragrance, and I find I have too many of the things that smell the same, yeah, I will probably sell or give away the fragrances that I find to be the lesser versions of what I have. So like I think a few years ago, I had so many vanilla amber designer fragrances, and after a while, they all kind of smelled so ridiculously similar. I sold most of them and just kept the one or two that I really loved the most. It doesn't mean that those fragrances weren't good. It's just I had too many of the same thing. And utilitarian fragrances, I don't need to have like 5 of the same, personally. But for me, when I'm filling holes in my collection, I'm mostly keeping and less selling. And when it comes down to completing my collection, I'm the type of collector where I really don't have an end date or a specific amount or a specific type of collection to be completely rounded out to where it'll be complete. That's just me. I wouldn't say it's completely healthy, but again, I do have those set very strong boundaries and rules for myself that I haven't broken, so I'm okay with that. But like when people are setting up their own rules and boundaries for themselves and their collection, that's when you'll kind of be like, well, why am I going to keep this? Why am I going to get rid of this? And again, like I said earlier, you'll know. It'll be a fragrance you don't wear too much, or maybe a fragrance you're tired of, or maybe a fragrance that you found a better version of, so you don't need to have two of the almost identical same thing because this one's better in regard to performance or just smells better on your skin. But sometimes I keep fragrances I don't like also for reviewing purposes. You know, there's a few fragrances that are more utilitarian that I don't like at all, but for some reason when I wear, I get compliments, people like the way it smells on me, and I'm like, okay, all right. But then I wear fragrances that I like that people just can't stand. So there's a few fragrances I also don't like that I keep for more utilitarian purposes. I don't know if that's completely answering your question, but I also think how I collect, I probably wouldn't be able to properly answer this question in a way that doesn't seem like I'm not just off my rocker in regards to why do I just keep adding and not getting rid of. And I do get rid of a lot. You guys don't see what leaves my collection. I really only show you what enters my collection. I do actually have a healthy stream of fragrances leaving my collection and as well as entering. I just tend to show you more what comes into my collection and not what goes. But I think to kind of answer your question in like 5 words or less, I do keep what I don't like to kind of complete and round out a collection more for utilitarian purposes in regards to reviewing fragrances and also just wearing scents with around certain people that only like certain fragrances, and one of those fragrances happens to be one I don't like. And Hamilton writes, when your collection gets to be very large, how do you organize and keep track of what you have? So very large depends on the person, but let's just say that very large for the average bear is 15 full-size bottles. I think that is easily could be considered a very large full-size collection. I think organizing and keeping your fragrances in a specific spot first is kind of like keeping them safe. So since there's so many of these guys back here, I do have to be mindful about like light and temperature. And I know that there's a lot of light on these guys when I'm filming, but there could be like a week or two I don't film because I've done so much pre-filming a few days before that they're, you know, I might not even walk in this room for like 2 to 3 weeks, believe it or not. So for when it comes down to organizing and keeping them is first keeping them someplace that you want to keep them. And I'm going to say this, I'm going to throw this out there. There's so much hate. And I get so scared when I see people putting these beautiful trays in windows, and when they have them in bathrooms, I'm like, oh, but I'm not gonna sit here and just be a purist because that's not fair. Look, however you collect, however you want to store your fragrances, it's up to you. If you've got a large collection, if you've got like 10 to 15 bottles, to be perfectly honest, you're probably wearing through a bottle or two like a year or maybe every few months, your most favorite. For the most part, it's probably fine. You know, store and organize your fragrances that makes you feel happy. If you have like an incredibly large collection, I would hope that you're going to be more mindful in where you put them. Some people keep them in their boxes and put them in closets. I do like to see my fragrances. Personally, I like to walk in and see what I'm wearing. I do have a number of scents, fragrances that are more part of my like summer rotation that I keep out of this collection someplace else, so I don't go into this room all the time unless I want to wear something specific. But keeping track of them, I don't know if I mentioned it in this video, I've mentioned it before. I got a book of all this stuff. It's not completely full, but it's pretty close, of all my scents, sizes, and when something leaves, when something comes in. You know, I do keep it like that. I am going to be doing it more digital, not so analog, but right now it's in that pink little thing, so I keep a track of that. Organizing it, I like to organize my fragrance collection every month as I get new fragrances in. Sometimes I don't have room to put them, so I do move them around. Generally, this guy right here is going to be my more expensive fragrances. This guy over here is going to have some expensive fragrances, but more fragrances that are kind of more in between niche and grab and go. And this guy over here is the ones I don't reach for that much, just because this used to be my go-to cabinet. A lot of things happen to this cabinet, so now it's just it's like the naughty corner for my fragrances. How you decide to organize and kind of arrange your fragrances and keep your fragrances is going to depend on your space. It's going to depend on if you want to have them on display because that makes you happy, or if you want to protect them and keep them hidden and dark in a cave. It really is up to you. I like to organize my fragrances by houses. I have thought about doing fragrances in rainbow order because I thought that would be fun. And I watched Simply Nailogical do her nail polish collection in rainbow order, and I was like, I should do that with my fragrances. And I was like, oh hell no, not doing that to myself. But I will say that, and I've said this before, these cabinets are not permanent. This whole room, I was supposed to, when we moved in, I was supposed to redo, like take it down almost to the studs and redo this room. But because of my dad, because of work, and then because of the beginning of this year, this has been put off. This is getting done. It's just not getting done in the summer because I don't want to hate myself, because I'm building custom cabinets. I'm building custom cabinets. A lot of people don't know, in our garage, we have a fab lab. So we have like a foundry, we have a very large CNC router, we have our sand blasting, glass blasting equipment, which amounts to in the 6 digits amount of equipment. It's just ridiculous how much glass blasting stuff we have. We have like 3 3D printers. I have a kiln, I have like a ceramics wheel because I do art and things like that. On top of like painting, like an entire painting studio, I have like, we are doing this room aside from the floors, like practically everything's gonna be custom built from scratch. Like we're gonna have some like really beautiful, hopefully really beautiful, interesting things in regards to cabinetry. I'm really excited. It just takes a lot of work and it's just not something I want to do in 105 degrees. So when it comes down to organizing and storing my fragrances, I'm very excited to finally being able to do this the way that we've planned, the way that I've planned since moving in. And whether or not I stay here, you know, for a few more years or forever, I mean, even if I get to enjoy it for like a year or two, you know, and then something happens and then I don't get to enjoy it anymore, I still get to enjoy it, you know. But for the most part, I'm excited to do that, and that's what's happening, and I'm very excited. So for me personally, I also enjoy organizing my fragrances. I get so much pleasure out of standing in front of this dang cabinet and taking everything down and putting everything up and cleaning everything. It's very centering for me. I just love it. So I do enjoy that as well. But organizing and storing your collection, if you have a larger collection, so a normal large collection, I would say, is 10 to 15 bottles. Let's be honest, that's almost $1,000 worth of perfume if you've got $100 worth of perfume if you've got like designer fragrances. That's a lot of money. That's a real amount of money. So, you know, if you want to put it on display, if you want to protect it, that's up to you. And it depends on how you want to organize it. For me, I organize by house, and also the ones that are more towards the front of the houses are the ones I'm wearing more frequently. So as you can see, I got my my royal crown here. I've got the 4 of them that I've been wearing the most, which is Rose Muscat, the Pater de Fleur, which I love, and we'll be reviewing that one very soon. Oud Jasmine and Absolute. Those are the ones I've been reaching for the most from that house. So I just put them up front. So as months or tastes or seasons change, I will also kind of rotate which ones are up front too. So I changed my mind. But when it comes to organizing larger collections, it's a lot of fun to organize. It's a lot of fun to display. And I'm not going to sit here and say, lock them up in a cave, don't let them see the light of day. Because honestly, if you enjoy seeing your fragrances and you're wearing them, put them on display. Just be mindful. Just try to be, maybe don't put them like in the window. Maybe put them on a desk like in the corner. I don't know. It's up to you however you want to display them. I think I'm talking way too much about this. Next question is fantastic because I feel like the 45 minutes of video of me giving advice, this question like sums it up. And it's like, Shock Baby B. And if I mispronounce your username, I'm sorry. They comment, I started out all over the place and now I'm more targeted to what I like or houses I'm taken with. How do you recommend to collect? The all over the place tactic led to a lot of declutter. It was a bit of YouTube made me buy it. I learned a lot about perfumes from you. Well, thank you. And how to think quality before quantity. Thus you have an enormous collection. Oh, okay, yeah, so this quantity over quality, I think, is setting, again, going back to setting rules and boundaries for yourself in regards to fragrances. I have to sit here because I feel like then I'm like way off. Anyway, this thing is driving me freaking nuts. I hate it. Anyway, quantity over quality, I think, has to do with what you think is quality. It's not price point. So you could think that an inexpensive body mist that you find at Ross for $5 smells so amazing on you, and you really only want to have 5 fragrances in your collection, and you know, you love that body mist over like a fragrance from Dior or Chanel. So quality does not mean price. It means you make it an important fragrance in your collection for whatever is important to you. That's what quality is. It's not price point. It's not perceived value. It's you adding quality. So there's some people that collect that, again, will collect and say, I'm only going to add fragrances to my collection. They will only be in my rotation. I won't even have samples or decants of anything in my drawer if they aren't masterpieces. And other people are like me, like, let's just buy everything. And even though I do have rules, I do know that, yeah, this is a lot. And I think that deciding how you collect, again, is going back down to your rules. And it is so easy when you start collecting. And collecting doesn't mean that you went from, I have like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm just at that point, you guys. Collecting doesn't mean that it's your first fragrance you buy. Like, I think fragrance collecting is like a mindset. It's like being a fan of sports and then being a fan of sports who buys season tickets and goes and travels with the team and is part of fantasy leagues and is buying like hundreds if not thousands of dollars worth of memorabilia. Like, it's a different mindset than just being an enthusiast and loving perfume. It's a different level, and it's so easy to get lost and so easy to fall down the rabbit hole and the incitement and the addiction and the endorphin rush of buying new things and adding new things to your collection, and then kind of realizing that you might only have the space, or you might only really wear 5 fragrances, so why do you have 15? And so again, as I've talked about it before, I'm a bit of a goldfish, so to kind of like keep myself on track, I have to kind of like reread the comments, which is what I'm doing. And I think that finding out how to collect, if you're going to start, if you think you're going to be the type of person where you want to try everything and have everything, and you're going to be more quantity over quality, start off with decants, samples, discovery sets of houses. Go to fragrance counter. Have the opportunity to go to a fragrance counter and try fragrances and sample fragrances and kind of experience new things. That's a great way to do it without spending a lot of money on just adding things to your collection blindly. And it's also a great way to try things on your skin, see what houses you like, what things you like and the like, but also, again, discovery sets are great. Services like Scentbird, Luxury Scent Box, I think it's Scent Box now, or I don't know what I don't know. Services like that are okay, depending on the types of fragrances that you like. I do have a love-hate with some of those fragrances, subscription services, but the ones where you can actually try are fantastic. My scent of the day is actually Scents of Wood, Sandalwood and Oak. Again, I reviewed this, a first impression of this the other day. I am like obsessed with this. I will be wearing through this whole thing, and I will be buying a bottle of this, and I'll probably be buying 2 or 3 more bottles from them. I signed up for their subscription service. I have their subscription box. They literally, like, I am a white whale, but for other people, for kind of going in, again, I'm a goldfish, I'm sorry. This is why I don't have any friends and I stay at home. I'm just, see how I'm like talking and I'm chatting? I'm the exact opposite in person. I'm like hiding in a corner. Recommending to collect is going to be based on your rules. Again, your budget, your space, how you want to add fragrances to your collection, because again, it is so exciting to try so many things, to add many things to your collection, to get that package in the mail, to open it up and smell it, and you love it, but then you find out you have no place to wear it, or maybe it gives you a headache, or you don't like the way it develops on your skin. So I think setting real rules and boundaries for yourself, will help you make smart financial decisions and be more of a fragrance collector and less of a fragrance addiction. But also it's going to make the fragrances you add to your collection a lot more special. There are some fragrances that I love, and I posted on my Instagram. One fragrance that I keep deciding if I want to buy or not is Scarlet Poppy from Jo Malone. This bottle is, for a small bottle, is $135, for a large bottle is $195. For me, if you know my collection and my purchasing habits, that is not a lot of money in regards to my budget for fragrance. Is it a lot of money for a bottle of perfume? Yes, but my budget for scents, like I said before, is quite large. I haven't purchased that fragrance yet because I don't know, with Jo Malone fragrances, it's one of the houses where I have another rule where I have to wear it on my skin for a while before I decide, because sometimes those fragrances just turn sour and I just keep talking myself out of this, but I really like it. But I have to do that, you know, so I'm not just going to Sephora, not just going to Ulta, not just going online and adding everything to my cart. And then, you know, the poor Amazon guy or the poor UPS guy is like, what are you doing? Please stop. Having those rules for yourself is going to help you collect and not be in the mindset of just buying because somebody made me buy it. It's going to make your decisions smarter. It's going to make your decisions more special. And I think also viewing it in that way is very healthy too. If you look at it as you're making a special decision, you're treating yourself with something worthwhile rather than you're denying yourself something. And I think that, you know, when you're setting these rules from yourself, view it as, I have $200 to spend on a bottle. I'm not saying it's $200, I'm just throwing out numbers. I'm only gonna add the best of the best so that when you do find that fragrance worth $200, it's something special. It's not just Beauty Meow loved this fragrance, and it's not just this other reviewer loved this scent. Like, you tried it, it was special, and it smells amazing on you, and it just kind of makes the entire experience, I think, more memorable and more valuable than just some random face on the internet or some blog post said it was good, and then you're adding things and you like them, but then you find that you're not wearing them, so then you're selling them and decluttering. But I will say that I do love decluttering videos. I think it's very healthy to see not just the haul videos adding in, but seeing people sharing, removing fragrances and decluttering fragrances. And for YouTube reviewers, I've talked about this before, but I really want to let you guys know, like, even if you don't have a lot of subscribers, like, the amount of fragrances that YouTube reviewers get is astronomical. I really don't get that many fragrances. I mean, I think every other month I might get 4 or 5 bottles, but there are some months where I might get like 20 or 30 bottles, or I might get sample sets and discovery sets. I only show you what I get of the full-size bottles. I'm not showing you all the discovery sets I get sent. I'm not showing you all of the sample-sized or travel-sized fragrances I get sent. I get sent a lot of stuff, and I don't have a big channel. So some of these channels that have way more subscribers or more viewers and engagement, they're getting like a lot of stuff. So of course they're gonna be decluttering. And I think, and I love seeing that, but also understand, like, I don't think that it's also healthy to go out and buy like 10 bottles of perfume and then 2 months later I'm decluttering, because you're wasting so much money. Like, understand, like, when it comes down to YouTube fragrance channels, like, we're sent so much stuff that we can declutter, and it's really not hitting us as hard financially as it would for you guys who don't have a channel, who don't get sent ridiculous amounts of samples or decants or full-size bottles, you know? And so just be mindful too that even these very healthy, very fantastic decluttering videos, like, if it's somebody where you purchased that bottle full price, you could be wasting hundreds of dollars. So being discerning with your money, setting real world boundaries for yourself in regards to, I'm only going to spend this much money, I'm only going to add this many bottles to my collection, based on your budget, based on how you want to collect, and based off of, you know, the amount of room and space you have where you keep your fragrances. Like, that's the most important thing. So that will keep you away from this kind of, like you said, this YouTube made me buy it mentality where you're just adding, and then subtracting. Like, curating your collection is smart. Removing fragrances from your collection you don't wear is smart. Selling fragrances and swapping fragrances to add new things to your collection is smart. But be mindful that you're just not adding for the sake of adding, because that's a lot of money that you're wasting, even if you're selling it. If, like I said, if you purchase, say, over the course of a year, 10 bottles because you're excited and YouTube made you do it, and you're like, oh, I can just declutter these if I don't like them, and then you declutter them and you sell them, and you maybe sell them for, if you're lucky, 50% of what you paid, then you just lost $500 in a year. And then this hobby, I mean, granted, when you spend money, you lose money, but you don't even have the fragrances, you know? You don't even have the product that you paid for anymore. You just have the loss of $500. So make sure that when you're adding to your fragrance collection and you're removing, you're doing so mindfully. And I think that's the most important thing. And again, some people's budget might be larger, some people's budget might be smaller. And I think that that's very important to just be smart so that you're not left with this mentality of I need to add and subtract because that's what YouTube does. I think subtracting is smart, but do so mindfully, and also, you know, be very mindful about your collection. And quality, again, does not have to be price. It just has to be the fragrances that make your heart sing. It could be inexpensive fragrances that you just decide over the course of trying expensive designers and maybe sampling some luxury niche that you just really love that body mist. You found it at Ross for $5 and it just, you get so many compliments, you smell beautiful, and you didn't spend 150 bucks on. That's a quality fragrance. It's not the price point, it's how it works for you and, you know, how it makes you feel. That's what the quality is. It's not the price. I hope I answered your question I can't say words properly. There we go. I'm sorry. I mispronounced her name. Please forgive me. I'm so sorry. Marty Vinci. Their question is, what is your opinion about buying backups? Do you have any? For someone with a big collection, is it worth it or a waste of money? If something is rare or discontinued, would you tend to use them or save it, sell later? And this is a great comment because this is going to segue into the last comment. Yes, we're almost done. I know this is a very long video. I only own a few backups. So I own a backup of Chanel No. 5, the red bottle. And I have a few backups of She from House of Matriarch because that is a limited edition fragrance and I love that scent. And that's all I have backups of. There are fragrances I wish I had backups of and I'm currently searching for, but I don't own backups of. I would say backups are important if a fragrance means that much to you. If it's that formulation, if it's a limited edition and you love it, I think backups are smart. Don't go crazy and buy like 8 of them. But say if you wear through that bottle of perfume in a year or two, and that's a fragrance you would have spent the money on anyway, and you have the money to spend on it, don't put yourself in debt over it. If you can afford to buy a backup or 2 of your favorite fragrance and it's that important to you, I think so. I don't think it's a waste of money. But do view that money as money spent. So let's look at it this way. Your budget for fragrance a year is $1,000 and you love this scent and it costs $200 and it's being discontinued, so you buy 2 other bottles. So you have 3 bottles of it, that's $600. That's your budget. You just spent it all on one fragrance. Don't say, well, these are backups, so they're next year's money, and no, that's that year's money. So just be mindful with how you spend your money and view it as that budget currently. Are you willing to give up that current budget for that scent? Then I'd say yes, if it's important to you. But just be mindful with your money, don't go crazy, because in most cases, again, segueing into the last comment, it's not so much an investment as it is an opportunity loss. Do you love that fragrance enough? She from House of Matriarch, yes, it's one of my fragrances. I did buy a red bottle of Chanel No. 5 that is in its box, it's still in its cellophane. That is, for me, more of a collecting piece than anything else. So yeah. So I hope that answered your question, because selling them later, going into Natalie P's question, and then somebody replied underneath it. So I'm gonna read the reply, or the question, and then the reply, and then I'm gonna go into the last bit of collecting. And Natalie P says, we all know that perfumes can be a good investment. Do you ever buy a fragrance solely for further reselling? If so, what are your tips, and what are those fragrances you see fit for such reselling purposes? Do you ever buy secondhand? Why not? And, you know, yes. And then the reply is, most perfumes, let's say you spend 100 and you sell secondhand for 30 to 50. I'm not sure how they are a good investment. Of course, there are 1 in 50 that maybe would bring more than the original price, but that's not often. So There are a few luxury items out there where if you purchase it, there's a likelihood that it's going to be a return on investment. From my basic understanding, really that's like specific handbags and pieces of jewelry, like, or like luxury cars that I'll, you know, like I would have to drain like a third of my savings account to, you know, pay for. Like, I don't know if I want to buy a Bentley right now. But for the most part, when it comes down to investments, no, fragrance is not an investment at all. This is a money sink, a money pit, a tar pit. You will lose your money if you sell, like I said before. That's why when I make my purchases and I sell from my collection, I know it's a money loss. And that's why I make sure, you know, like I have a rhyme to my reason, like there's a method to my madness in regards to the rules I set for myself, so that way I'm not, you know, sinking so much into my account or so much into this that I have no money in my savings account. Again, for me, it's different than anybody else. There are, however, a few fragrances that I've purchased that are now worth way more. I would have bought backups of these even if they weren't worth money because they are so good. Antonia's Flowers, rest in peace. Tempeh Passate right now, you can buy a partial bottle of that for like $500 to $600. A full-size bottle is like $1,000. I think I spent $150 on mine. If I had known that Antonia's Flowers was going kaput, I would have bought like 10 bottles of Tempeh Passate because I love that fragrance. I probably wouldn't have sold them. I probably would have kept them as a backup bottle to kind of talk about how much I love that fragrance, like the coughing. I have one bottle of that thing and I'm like, I don't wear it and it makes me so sad because I love it. I have briefly thought about trying to reach out to that company in any capacity to see if I could buy the formula. I know that the money would probably be absorbently expensive and I highly doubt they would let me, but I love that fragrance so much I've considered it because I love it. But for the most part, I wouldn't even say 1 in 50. I would say like 1 in 1,000. Fragrance is not, you don't make money doing this. The only way you might possibly make any type of money with a fragrance collection is decanting. But if you wanted to make money off of fragrances, you have to be lucky, right place, right time. Again, like I said, if I'd known Antonia's Flowers was going kaput and I had bought like, say, 50 bottles of Tempeh Passate, I wouldn't sell them all at once because there would be no demand, but over the course of a few years, I could probably make my money back of what I spent on them in probably like 2 years and then have like a nice fat backup amount of Tempeh Passate for me. There's like some very popular like designer fragrances, like formulations that are highly sought after that sometimes people will randomly find at like an estate sale, or they'll find online that somebody's selling and they don't know what they have and they might spend $20 on it and the people can maybe sell it for like 200 bucks. Like, you're really not gonna like be able to really make a living selling fragrances like that in regards to having a collection and kind of selling your collection and holding on to a fragrance. Unless you, like, again, have an absorbent amount of money, you might maybe make your money back, but you're really not going to make so much of a profit that it's going to be worth it, again, unless you have like a decanting business. That's the only way I can see making any type of profit off of a collection. Now, buying secondhand, I do buy secondhand. I buy from gray market sites. I've bought from places like Depop, and there's a few fragrances I'm looking at on Depop, Tradesy, some on eBay. I'm very mindful of eBay, and from people. When I buy from people, I'm very mindful about the people I buy it from, and I'm also very mindful of when I buy things secondhand. There's really only a few people that I will purchase from more than $100, and those are people that I know the legitimacy of their collection, and it's not that I think that people will try to pull one over on me. I just think that there's some fakes out there that are so good that even the people that own the houses might have to take a second or third look at a bottle and a box, because the fakes are getting to be literally like carbon copies, doppelgangers of the original, minus like 1 or 2 little things that are different in regards to presentation and smell. So that's where like I would want to be very mindful of the money that I spent on other people, not because I think that they were trying to screw me over, but fakes are getting to be really, really good, like really, really good. So I would just be mindful of the people that I bought it from, just because it's not that I don't trust people, it's just that there's always the opportunity that something could slip through the cracks. Like, I don't know where they got their bottle. Did they buy it from a legitimate source? Was it given to them? Was it a swap? Who swapped with them, you know? And if it's over $100, I'm like, I'll just stick with these people that I know their collections, I know where they get them, and they're honest with me, like I trust them. Again, it's not talking bad about anybody, it's just, again, be discerning, like making rules for yourself. That's a rule for myself. I'm not gonna spend more than this amount of money on a secondhand fragrance if I can't like almost completely trust the person where it's coming from. Again, it doesn't mean that the person's untrustworthy or that they're, you know, unintelligent when it comes down to fakes or counterfeits. It's just fakes or counterfeits out there are getting to be so good. Like, again, like people that own houses would take a second look at some of these fragrances. That's all that I mean. So I think that's kind of ending the video. I know this is very long. I know filming this video and talking about this video, we're at like the 1.5 hour mark. I'm gonna try and get this as low as possible. Probably try and hopefully like trim it down to 45 minutes. We'll see. I did want to sit down and answer these questions and talk to you guys a little bit, so I did hope you enjoyed this video. If I didn't get to your question, I will definitely address it in the next video sometime next week, where I talk about fragrances and like answering questions and comments on past videos. And I'll see what kind of comments are out there, and I'll put out another one of these kind of like posts to see if you guys have any specific questions to that. So thank you to everybody who commented and asked questions. I appreciate it. Sorry for my scratchy voice. Sorry if I talked in circles, but this was a very long video, but I also thought it was a lot of fun to kind of sit down and chat with you guys. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any kind of other questions that you'd like me to address, let me know in this video below, and I'll either kind of try and type out a really long response, or when I film the other video, I'll have like a little section in response to this. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will let you guys go. I hope you guys are all happy and healthy and have a great day, year, month, whatever, and I'll see you next time. Bye.